I'm here today with Jeff Mann. He has an incredible story, and he's so full of light and positivity that I had to have him on. He's covered so many bases in his life, and I wanted to hear all about him. So will you tell me a little bit, we were just talking a second ago about how your life started.
Awesome. No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so my life is kind of crazy. I was born in Maryland, adopted at 3 weeks old to Boise, Idaho. Grew up there when I was 7. We moved to Zimbabwe while my dad did humanitarian work for 2 years. Moved back. In middle school, my dad was called as a mission president. So
For the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he moved to South Africa for 3 years. I went to middle school there, moved back for high school, and then finished high school, came down to Utah, went to Utah Valley for a semester, and then got my mission call back to West Africa.
When you got your mission call, were you just like, what in the world? I'm going back to Africa.
My parents thought I would end up back in Africa, and I didn't. But I got it, and I was excited. My brother got a mission call to Africa also, and so I said, we're going back. The thing that was interesting there is I knew I was going back to Africa, so I actually kind of let myself go. I ate a bunch of ice cream. I ate all the stuff I knew I couldn't get in Africa. And so, but I loved it.
You
It was
did?
the best 2 years.
Will you tell me about that a little bit?
Yeah.
What did you love about it?
Honestly, so I call my mission one of the last real missions. People may not like that, but a year into my mission is when they did the H change and they sent the 18-year-old missionaries.
Yeah.
And for me, out there getting a bunch of 18-year-olds to Africa was miserable because we didn't have, running water in some of the apartments. We didn't have electricity 24/7. And so it was, for them to come from Utah and Idaho and Montana, it
that's
was
hard.
a new thing for them. But I loved my mission. I love the people. I'm in a unique situation. My dad does self-reliance for the church.
Wow.
And so during my mission, the church assigned my parents to my mission. And so a year in, my parents showed up in my mission. I'd be riding my bike and my mom would drive by.
Are you serious?
And being at,
That never happens.
Yeah. And being by the mission home, I could see my parents were in a different room having meetings. And so I actually spent the last year and a half in one area on the opposite side of the mission, away from my parents.
Wow.
But I was able to see them twice, which was fun.
Yeah.
And it was a little difficult when missionaries would text me and say, hey, we just saw your parents, or your dad just took us to dinner and everything. But it was fun. My dad came out to one of my apartments and got to see it. He didn't bring my mom because she probably wouldn't have liked where we were living and stuff. But I loved it.
Oh my goodness. That is so crazy. It's like, I'm picturing this apartment, and of course you can't compare like Jersey City to anything like that. But in my mission, I remember thinking I thought they were joking the first night I arrived there. I thought they were playing a giant joke. I had always heard of these like mission jokes that they did, and we arrived in the apartment. I didn't even start unpacking because I was like, this is a joke. No. And then everyone was being normal and unpacking. I was like, oh my gosh, this is where I'm going to live.
Yeah, it's. I don't think they prepare you for where you live when you go overseas on missions. I know one of my first apartments, everything was on tables because the apartment had been flooding. And so suitcases on tables and everything. And that's just the way the missionaries had been living. But it was different, And the thing for me that was fun is towards the end of my mission, one of the couples had a medical emergency. So they got sent home. And so they moved us into the couple's apartment. And so we showed up and there was a TV and we had a washer and a dryer for the first time. And the fridge was full of all the food that they had from America. And so that was a big shift. But yeah, apartments on missions are a whole new world.
Wow. Okay, so you were adopted, you said from Baltimore, right? Maryland, and then brought over to Idaho. And I know we talked about this a second ago. I want to ask something a little bit controversial, but your family's white that you're adopted into, right?
Yeah.
And how has that been for you?
It was a unique experience because, my parents had 4 kids, and my parents got talking and they wanted to have a rainbow family. And so they ended up, adopting 2 kids that were African American. And it was different bringing us to Idaho. My dad told a story once we were at the mall and security guard was following us around in one of the stores to make sure we didn't steal anything. And they didn't know this was my father. And so he would watch and stuff like that. And my brother got a Mustang in high school, and a cop followed us back to the house until my dad came outside. So there was those challenges that came with it. We had a family reunion once, and I was a troublemaker growing up. I was probably one of the worst kids of the family, and I was throwing sand at people. And so my dad threw me off the dock, and one of the families actually called the police because they saw, this black kid was being harassed, and they didn't know it was my parents at the time. And so they
it's
came
awful.
up to the cabin and stuff. But it had unique challenges.
Yeah.
But on the same part, you were, because there were a lot of kids that looked like you could become the popular kid.
Sure.
Everyone knew who you were.
Yeah.
And so that aspect was nice.
Yeah. And you're such a positive person. Just a second ago when we were talking about this, you were just like, yeah, it was great. It's like this, you've chosen to make this a positive thing. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, one of the things that I think I've learned in my life is definitely we have choices, and we can choose to be angry about things, or we can choose to take things and use them for our advantage.
Sure.
And so one of the things, the high school I went to, I was one of the first black kids in the school.
Wow.
One of the only black kids to go there. I had different experiences from people in KKK robes one year. I had pictures of me hanging from a tree, drawn in my textbooks. And
my
so
gosh,
at that
that's
moment,
horrible.
it's one of my life goals is I want to impact 1 billion lives with my time on the planet. And I set a goal that I wanted to treat people in such a way that they would never feel the way that I did. And so
Yeah.
that kind of shifted my whole thinking, and that's what got me into coaching and just wanting to help people.
Yeah. So tell me about coaching and how that started.
So I was playing rugby at UVU, and one of my buddies said, "Hey, I'm coaching the 7th grade football team in Pleasant Grove. You should come help me." And I went out, I had a blast, connected with the families, the kids, and so I ended up working with those kids from 7th grade up to their senior year of high school.
Wow. And you have a bunch of college athletes right now.
Yeah, so I train at a gym, and I've done personal training for the past 7 years, and I just have, I got into it with 2 kids that were in the 7th grade, and just a little small gym, and it started to grow, and word of mouth started to grow, and then I started doing ads on social media, and my audience grew, and got into different sports: football, rugby, basketball, soccer, lacrosse, tennis, golf. And as the athletes got older, and they had older brothers, and I ran into older athletes, it just expanded from 6-year-olds to middle school to high school to college, and then overseas basketball players.
Wow. And you just kind of had this idea come to you to start doing that?
I had experiences in Provo where I'd have kids, they would see the way that I looked and see me, and they'd be like, "Hey, good luck in the BYU football game." They would think I was on one of the teams. And so I said, if parents
You're
are
like,
gonna
not
think
every
this,
black guy in Utah plays
please,
on the
thank you.
team.
Can I be on the chess club or something? And so I said, I'm going to use this for my advantage. And so I started, training kids. And, a lot of parents wouldn't even ask, well, what's your resume? What's your certification?
They're like, you must be amazing.
Yeah. He knows what he's doing.
Gosh.
Here's the money. And so started doing that. I helped open a gym called the Training Room in American Fork, and went from there to Performance One in Lehigh, which is elite training for athletes, and then branched out on my own.
Wow.
I just had all these kids that were following me gym to gym, and I said, why can't I do this on my own? And so branched out there, and then up until February of this month, I was doing training full time.
That is so cool. I don't mean to jump around so much. I had this thought to go back to this a little bit. That stuff that you just told me is horrific, about pictures of you being hung from a tree and things like that. That's absolutely disgusting. How has that not made you bitter?
At the time, I think one of the things, I was so young that it didn't affect me as much as it could have. But the other thing is, I don't think I'd be the person I am today if that didn't happen. I think that shaped a lot of the things I've done in my life. Like, one of the things that I've dedicated myself in the gym and to fitness is because I told myself, I'm going to make myself into a weapon, so that no one can physically harm me.
Sure.
No one would approach me. But at the other hand, I think it's helped me set my life goals and choose the path that I want to forge.
How does that not make you... I mean, if I were in your shoes, I hate to say it, but I would feel a little bit racist towards the people who did that. How have you been able to overcome that and not feel racist?
One of the things that helped me is, I think 2 things. My family is white, and so...
And they've been good to you?
And they've been amazing. Love my family. I've never had any issues within my family, and so that helped. I think the other thing also is seeing 2 sides. Living in Africa for 7 years versus living in the United States, I've been able to see different cultures and the way people interact. And I think it's just, my approach on life has just been, not to dwell on it, but to use it. Sure. I think it could have sent me in a different path.
Sure.
And just anger. And, I have my moments when I'm angry and I deal with issues and stuff. And that's one of the things that I've struggled with. I've always had the worst temper that you'd ever see. I mean, and I...
Channel it.
Yeah. And even, any of my friends will tell you, even in basketball, I could end up fighting like this. But
is it
just,
church basketball? Because everyone ends up in a fight.
Oh, yeah. No, it's at the church. It's at the church.
It always is.
Uh-huh.
I see a side of my husband there that I'm like, I'm so disappointed. It's just a game. It doesn't matter.
Oh, it changes people. You could have the nicest person in the world. You put them on a church court, they change.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. What would you say percentage-wise, when you were in high school and that stuff happened, would you say it was more people that were doing that or more people were kind?
Honestly, I'd say 50-50.
Really?
I mean, I was at a small school. My graduating class was 75 kids.
Oh,
so small school, farm town.
Yeah.
But, the other thing, though, is the kids just didn't have world experience.
Yeah.
And so, you don't know what you don't know. And so I don't think they had connected with people outside of their culture and their surroundings.
Yeah, that's so sad to me. That makes my stomach drop even just hearing that. It's so sad. What would you say is the hardest thing you've had to overcome that has taught you the most?
Honestly,
that's a deep question. Sorry.
No, I love it. I think the hardest thing, honestly, I'd say has been the struggles I have with my anger, because one of the things I've noticed is I'm stronger than 90% of the people I come across.
Yeah.
And so if I can't control that, I put people in a situation where they're not safe. But at the same time, I put myself in a situation where I'm not safe. One of the things I know, I live in Utah. There's not many black people in Utah. And so I hate the stereotype angry black person. And so I know if I'm somewhere in public causing a fight, having an issue, the repercussions for me are bigger than anybody else. And so I think that's the hardest thing I've had to overcome is knowing my surroundings.
Sure.
And knowing how to conduct myself.
Yeah.
If you ask any of my family, my friends, I have a fake pair of glasses in my truck. And so if I were to get pulled over or a situation, the glasses go on. White Jeff shows up, voice changes, everything. Oh, I got the Urkel voice down. It's a whole, and I've planned it to a T where, if I get pulled over, I'll hand them either my Temple Recommend or my Eagle Scout card first.
Oh, oops.
Oh, sorry, wrong one, officer. But I feel like oh, he's one of us. That's okay.
Oh,
go ahead, sir. But it's just, one of the strategies that I've done, and it's,
I hope no
worked.
Cops are watching this. They're like, he did that to me.
Sorry.
Just
hey,
kidding. They would
if
like
you're watching this, I apologize, but it worked.
Don't apologize. Oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. And in fact, right before this, you were saying too, you're like, I like country music. We talked about some other things that maybe people wouldn't expect with these stereotypes. And I love that because we talked about how you haven't bought into what society has told you.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think I'd say I'm like a chameleon. I look at the audience that I'm with. If I'm with a bunch of black guys in Salt Lake, I will completely change my persona, the music I listen to.
But not your morals.
Yeah, my morals will stay the same. But, if I'm with people, usually in Utah County, it's country music. We're doing stuff outside. If I'm around Africans, my whole tone will change. And I'll kind of speak the same way that they do. So it really just, and I'm at the gym, it's a different persona.
Sure.
So wherever I find myself, that's what I change to.
I don't think that's being fake. I think that's knowing your audience.
Yeah.
We talked about this a second ago. And we did talk about how it's like when you've been to Miami and stuff for work, people know that you're not going to drink. You're not going to be doing the partying stuff that they're doing. But you'll love them for who they are. That says a lot about you. I love that. Keep your standards but be open to other people and loving to them. For example, this is where we totally connect on this. I was married in the Salt Lake LDS Temple, and I'm a very active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. One of my very best friends, and actually my maid of honor at my wedding, is a lesbian, and she and her then fiance, now wife, waited outside the temple for me. We view life and religion and things like that very differently, but we've never had an issue because she knows I love her and I know she loves me, and what else is there? We love each other. I'm not going to push things on her. She's not going to push things on me. It's like, why not just love each other and see what other people have to offer and maintain your standards?
That's the thing I see with people when they have issues with religions is they don't think about the religion, they think about the people. Someone in the religion could say something that offends them, and then it completely turns them off from the religion when they don't think, okay, it's not the religion that said it, it's the person.
Sure,
and people are human, people are normal, people make mistakes. And so I always tell people, don't base it on the people. Go and read, go and study, go and understand. And then if you have an issue, that's fine. But if it's based off what one person tells you, then you can't let that drive how you feel or what you think.
Oh, sure, because we've all been offended, and we've all been the ones who have been doing the offending. Every single one of us. Wow. So speaking of that, where do you stand with religion?
So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'll say the whole word because that's what they like us to say now. And you know, I've been a member my whole life. I have siblings who are no longer in the church. But
so how do you still stay in the church if you have loved ones who aren't?
You know, my thing is just I have my reasons why I'm a member of the church.
Sure.
I serve my mission. I love the Bible. I study a lot, and so I know everything I do in my life is between me and God.
Sure.
And my biggest thing is I always say this phrase that if I were to die, would God know me from the conversations I had here with Him on earth? Sure. And you know, that's something I think about every day. You know, before I played sports, I used to pray before I'd go out on the field or whatever. And so and I've had a lot of stuff that have offended me before.
Sure.
You know, and I've thought, do I stay in this religion? And I always go back to people aren't perfect.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, I've had a lot of horrible things said to me too. We just talked about it right before. But yeah, you just stick with what you know.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that. One last question that I kind of asked before, but just all encompassing, how are you so positive? Like if someone goes and looks at your Instagram without even knowing you, they're going to know, man, this guy's so upbeat. He's so positive. You see life through a lens that is just through such goodness. How do you do that?
You know, I've told a lot of people that I work with for the past 3 months, I've run off 2 hours of sleep a night. And they're like, well, it's not healthy, don't overwork. But my thing is making impact on people, making impact in business is what drives me.
Sure.
It's what fuels me. It gives me the energy that I need. So I just keep going. And my thing is, you know, I can be having an awful day, but if one person in that room, if I can make their day better, then that gives me energy to keep going and continue.
So would you say selflessness brings you joy?
Yeah. I think giving to others, supporting others, you know, and, you know, I have my days where I could be miserable and I'm sad and angry. I go through all the emotions. But I come back to, okay, here's my goals. Here's what I set out to do. Here's how I want to make a difference.
Okay, sorry, I lied. Last question. When you talked about your anger, how does someone who's struggling with severe anger issues, what are the steps that you take when you're in that moment to avoid having a crazy outburst?
So
other than the glasses in your temple.
Yeah, so I'm not perfect. My friends can tell you that I slip up all the time.
Sure.
It's one of the things that I work, you know, with my life coach and my therapist on is what's my coping mechanisms. I have a safe word that I've used that if someone says it, it helps to snap me out of that cycle, that trance that I'm in. So that helps. But I've learned to remove myself from situations. So I am the most competitive person in the world. And, you know, back to church ball, and I can be finding myself getting angry. And I've got to the point where I'll just remove myself.
Sure.
Keep myself in check, either come back or move on. I just remove myself from situations.
And if you do have an outburst, are you prone to go say sorry? Like, how do you correct that?
See, that's a tough question because I hate to be wrong, and me apologizing is one of the toughest things that I've ever had to do.
Probably so good for you.
And so I've learned lately that there's a few people that I had issues with probably months, years ago. And in the last few months, you know, I've just spoken to them in person and apologized and had dialogue, conversations. And so I think and also explain to people why. I was angry, this happened because of A, B, and C, helping them understand from my lens.
Sure. Here's
what led to it.
Sure.
And coping that way. But that's probably my biggest thing that I struggle because anyone that has an argument with me, I can't be wrong. Somehow, some way I'm right. And, you know, and a lot of times I'm not right, but it's just who I am.
Something you're working on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I love that. I think you're such an incredible person, and I love the fact that you recognize your weaknesses, but you're such a positive person and you're helping so many people. Go to his Facebook page too, because you'll just see all the cool stuff he does for people. Where do they find you on Instagram?
So Instagram is progression_perfection, but for the older people, Facebook is just Jeffrey Mann, because I know older people are still on Facebook. You didn't say MySpace, so So we got that one right.
So true. Oh, you are so awesome. Thank you so much for being here
Well,
today.
thank you for having me.